Today we're going to introduce a method called setTimeout that is native to the JavaScript programming language, and it's going to make what I meant by JavaScript as a time-based medium really explicit. So when we use setTimeout, in a way we can schedule events and schedule action to take place at very specific time. And the experience of that is very similar to editing a video on the timeline. So as you can see here, this is a example of a timeline from After Effects, and you can create and sequence and layer different video clips. Translated into JavaScript, it will be different events that can be scheduled at specific time, and many of them can happen simultaneously. And maybe in the future we get more advanced with this. You can even have each of them affect each other. So there's basically endless possibilities when it comes to creating and sequencing events in JavaScript. So we're gonna get straight into it. And just to demonstrate how it's a native JavaScript method, I'm going to work a second without p5. So if I deleted all my function setup, function draw here, now this is just a JavaScript editor. What I'm going to do is first show you the setTimeout syntax. So the syntax here for this method is setTimeout with the T capitalized. Inside of the parentheses for that method, it takes two arguments. Okay, so the first argument it takes is a function. And this is kind of a new concept here. We have never fed a function into an argument before. So this is in a way a step up, like realizing that, oh, we can actually send a function through an argument. That's a thing. So how are we going to write this? We're going to first create a function here underneath, and I'm going to call it just function1, referring to the first event that's going to happen. And I'm just going to very simply use my console.log here because I can't use any of my p5 drawing features. And I'm going to say, first event triggered. And so in order to load this function and feed it into our argument here instead of our setTimeout, we just have to write one to, like, in a way load that function that's currently separated from the method. And we are also going to indicate when it should happen. So this is where the time-based element come in. And what it takes, the value it takes is milliseconds. So we have learned previously in millis that in millisecond, 1 second translates to 1,000, 2 seconds translates to 2,000. So what if I just say 3,000? Indicating that, okay, so this function number 1 is going to be triggered after 3 seconds. So if I hit play here, I have to wait, but like after 3 seconds, we're gonna see first event triggered in our console log, right? And you can create as many setTimeout as you want, especially for the purpose of this, exercise to just learn this basic idea. Let's actually make multiple setTimeout. And I'm gonna make like 2 more events. So function2, and just gonna copy this and make it a second event. Function3, third event. And here I'm gonna make it happen at different time, right? So 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds. One thing I forgot to do, here I have to do 2, and here I have to do 3, I think. Okay, so let me hit play again. And yes, first event trigger after 3 seconds, and then the second one, and then the third one. And notice that because we are working outside of function draw that P5 offers us, each one of these console.log command only get executed one time. So it is not, we're not in a looping situation anymore when we work outside of function draw. So that's just something to take note of and be aware of. Okay, so now we get a basic idea of what setTimeout does and how to use it outside of the P5 context. Let's actually return to the P5 context. I'm going to use this logic to create a very simple text animation. So let's see. So I'm going to create a new sketch. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to upload my custom font. So by the way, p5.js library likes the font format OTF, open type font. So make sure that whatever font you decide to use, you are downloading it in the format of in OTF. So I have OTF here ready to go, and I'm just going to upload it. Okay, so this font is called Literal. And so what I have to do to load my font is very similar to loading a media file, such as an image or a sound. So I am going to use function preload. First, I'm going to create a variable to hold my font. So I'm going to call it literal. And I'm going to create a function preload. And I'm going to say literal equals to load font. And I'm going to indicate the path to the font. And that's going to be living inside the string literal.otf. Okay, so beautiful. What I have to do next to load my font into the program is I have to use a P5 function called text font. And inside of that, I just have to fill in my variable name, literal. And now here, I'm going to just test it real quick. So I'm going to write text. And I'm going to say hello. And I'm actually going to place my text in the center of my canvas. So 200, 200. Okay, so now I can see that my font is being loaded correctly, and that's great. So I'm gonna keep moving forward. Here's what we have to think about. We want to schedule setTimeout and use it to affect our animation, our text animation. setTimeout needs to only be executed once, right? We only need to tell the program, hey, just remember to like trigger this event after 10 seconds, you know, whenever it is like triggered, whenever we give that command, it starts counting, right? So it probably doesn't make sense for us to put that inside of draw, because if we put our setTimeout into draw, it's going to execute that command every single frame, and there's 60 frames per second, and the program might just explode if we do that. So let's put it inside of setup for now. And that might actually be the default for most of the time that you use setTimeout. So I'm gonna here say setTimeout, and I'm gonna borrow the same function that I had. So I'm gonna do function 1, and I'm going to do function 2. So there's gonna be 2 functions, and I'm gonna create 2 setTimeout to load them. So the first setTimeout is going to be loaded, I think, let's just say after 1 second, and the second setTimeout is going to be loaded at 3 seconds. So just notice that these are kind of like global methods that live independently from our preconceived notion of like how like function draw or any other P5 ways of like timing things to work, right? So whenever the program recognizes line 11 and 12, it's going to sort of like it's almost like setting a reminder and being like, oh, this is gonna happen at 1 second and 3 seconds, no matter what anyone else says in this program. So, okay, so we're gonna keep moving forward. And there's just a couple of things I want to do. So I think I want to maybe, first of all, have every single stage. There are 3 stages now. So there's like the starting stage of my animation. There's stage 1 and there's stage 2. I want each of these stages to load a different word from a sentence. So let's first create a sentence. And here I am going to write a sentence, let sentence, and I'm just going to say, oops, I'm just going to say, let's say coding is just like dancing. Okay, so coding is just like dancing, and we're actually gonna treat this animation like a choreography. So we're going to like make the text move and animate in different way in every single stages of this choreography. All right, and so we got the sentence here, and now we have to have a variable to like load each of those items in our sentence. So I'm actually going to say let word. And I'm going to go down here to my text and replace my hello with a variable word. I'm also going to change my position into variables. So it's going to be x and y. I'm going to go back up and do let x equals 200, let y equals 200. Okay, so if I hit play now, nothing is happening because I need to assign my first word from my sentence to the word variable. So instead of setup, I'm going to say word equals to sentence 0. That will be my starting point. And the next stage, I'm also going to make the text bigger. It's hard to see. So I'm going to say inside of my draw, text size, and I'm actually gonna make this a global variable too, so I'm saying variable ts, and up here I'm gonna say ts is gonna start with 50. Okay, so also there's all kind of stuff, all kind of styling you can do with the text. Here I'm going to just quickly do text align, and I'm gonna write center, which is going to make my text centered horizontally. And I can write a second center to make it also centered vertically. Cool. And I'm also going to go ahead and just like assign different word from that sentence array at different stages. So inside of function 1, I'm going to say word is going to be changed to sentence 1. And in my function 2, word is going to be changed to sentence 2. So there you go. So this is exactly in action now. You see that at like the time that we have set, the word is progressing and animating and moving forward, right? setTimeout is not a looping feature. We're actually going to talk about that next for like set interval. setTimeout is a way to make something happen once at some point of the program. Okay, so now we know this, we can then go ahead and like do many different kinds of things to our animation. We can build on top of our function 1 and 2. So for example, TS, my text size starts at 50. Maybe in one, the TS can be reduced to 30, and maybe in two, it can get increased to 70. The world is the limit. And also maybe I can maybe change the background color so it's not so boring. So let me actually go down here, and I'm gonna write 220 200 which I think is a yellow mustard background. So you can see that there's just like all kinds of things you can do now to make your cuts and your different stages of your animation more exciting and more dynamic. I can even add a moving motion feature into it. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say x equals x plus speed. And I'm actually going to start speed at 0. So that when I hit play, it's not going to move. Or actually, no, maybe I do want it to move at the beginning. So I'm going to make it 1 so that in the beginning, it's going to move, right? and you can see that, oh, like if it just keep moving, it would just be gone forever. So what if we then in function 1 change that? So maybe in function 1, we can change speed equals to -1. And in function 2, we can make speed equals to 0. So in this way, you have like very fine control over what happened to these words at different stages. And here we can also deal with like transitions in rotation. So for example, let's say we want to add a rotate in here. And I better come back here and change this to angle mode. And come back down here or come up here, and I'm going to say let R is going to start at 0. And so this will be R, and R would also plus equal to speed, right? So if I do that, let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so now we can see that, okay, so like everything is completely off. And so this is something very important to remember, right? It is so much easier to also use translate to like position your text when you're using rotate instead of using the actual X and Y position. So here I'm going to do translate. I'm going to put X and Y here instead. I'm going to change the X and Y position for my text to 0, 0. Okay, so if I hit play here, I can see that, okay, now the transition is happening at the center of my text, which makes rotation a lot less confusing. Okay, so let's move to the last stage. So far, we have only created setTimeout inside of setup, but that's not the only place that it can live. So any kind of function within P5 that would execute the code only once can also, host setTimeout. So why not integrate a function mousePressed in here? And what we're going to do is we're going to create a setTimeout here, and I'm going to call this the final function, and I'm going to make it triggered after 1 second. And down here, I'm going to say final. Actually, I'm going to put it up where all my functions are right here. So function final. And maybe, let's see what we can do. Maybe here we can just like change the color. Or actually, I can just like maybe randomize the rotation of my text. So what if I do R would equal to random 360. So if I do that, after my animation happens, I'm going to try clicking, and every time I click, after 1 second, it is going to give me a new random R rotation value, right? So just know that, set timeout is something that you can execute and implement at any time of the program under the circumstance that you are only executing it once.